What's going on, guys? It is Monero Mateo. Welcome back to another video. We're going to talk a little bit about the news. We're going to talk a little bit about shortages, which is bullish for Monero, bearish for human life, but bullish for Monero, which is awesome. Somebody had mentioned something about Fluffy Pony, and I'm going to do a video about that later this week. It's a shame what happened to him, but when you work on developments and projects that threaten the power of the very powerful, that threaten the monopoly that criminals have over the counterfeiting of money, and thereby the power over the entire planet, they tend to not like that, and they'll go after you. So this is risky business, ladies and gentlemen. And talking about the people in power, there's a new subscriber to our channel, a good friend of mine, Jesse, who just recently valiantly fell to the Twitter control freaks who are trying to censor everybody. And this is something that I noticed when I made this Twitter account, which actually is my first Twitter account that I've ever had. I've never been on Twitter. I've always seen it as sort of a cesspit of evil. But being on there, it's like you do kind of self-censor yourself because you've looked at the news, you look at a lot of people who have been kicked off for saying certain things and exposing certain pretty critical information that people need to know. They get kicked off, and you don't want to get kicked off because you're trying to get good information to people, and then because of that censorship, you're then trying to walk this, balance beam, to make a reference to this Olympic stuff, and you're trying to balance the good with the bad. You're trying to balance how much truth to get out there, and that's never good. That's never good. I wish that wouldn't happen, but nevertheless, that is what's happening. And he had made a post about Santa Claus, our great friend at the World Economic Forum, Santa Claus, who is trying to take over the world. He's that German guy who talks like a Bond villain. He's like, we will vaccinate the entire world, and you will like it, and if you don't like it, we will shut off your internet and you will die. That guy. Oh, man. How are we ruled by these people? It just kind of destroys my soul knowing that. But God is with us. God is real. He is out there. And Monero fixes this also. Monero fixes this. And that's something we, again, have to say more and more. Monero fixes this. And there have been a lot of people coming to my channel lately relative to, a week ago when we first started. We're having some good growth, and we're having people, I think, realize the value of these privacy currencies and how vital it's going to be in this brave new world that we're going into. And I just want to remind everybody that if you find these videos to be meaningful, if you think that other people can find value from learning about privacy coins, go ahead and hit the like button. We're growing in subscriptions. We're growing in viewership. This is all fantastic. I'm getting some followers on Twitter. These are all great things. But please like the video. Please comment. This helps the videos bubble to the surface and allows more people to get exposure to it. So those are just a few housekeeping things I want to mention. But everybody new, welcome to the channel. Love to have you. So I wanted to talk today about shortages. I want to talk about why it is that shortages are coming, what it is that you could do to prepare for it, and why it is it's good for Monero. Specifically, we're going to talk about black markets, which are typically the responses to shortages. And so our first article here is about Tyson Foods. It's 120,000 people in the U.S. workforce to get vaccinated. And this is just the beginning of a growing trend of big corporate conglomerates mandating people to get the jab. And a lot of people are going to not get the jab. Those people are going to leave the workforce, or they're just going to get fired because, you don't want to voluntarily quit. If you're put in this position, make sure they fire you. Have them fire you so that you could get unemployment. Although I'm confused if you apply for unemployment and you weren't able to keep your job because you didn't want to get some untested medical procedure that your corporation was requiring you to get, which just sounds insane, but that's where we were at. And if that's the case, are you able to successfully apply for unemployment? I wonder if in the new infrastructure bill they have a stipulation that says you can't get unemployment if you're not vaccinated, or you were fired because you didn't get vaccinated. That's going to be an interesting conversation, because if that's the case, I mean, that's totally evil. Like, it's going to be very bad. That would be very bad. But what I want to make the point about here is that Tyson Foods is one of those central nodes of failure, right? During the whole corona thing of 2020, when they had people at their workforce get infected, they had to shut down plants. And when they shut down the plants, you had shortages of meat throughout the country. Excuse me. And that was a problem that caused shortages, and that caused some pretty structural issues. So if it's going to require people to get the vaccine, and I'm not trying to YouTube or big tech put out misinformation about this, but it's true that people who get vaccinated are getting the disease at a higher rate than people who are unvaccinated, as far as I could tell, even though they're blaming the unvaccinated for the rise of this new strain. If that's the case, that people who are getting vaccinated, and I think Lindsey Graham just came out today and he has COVID again after he got the vaccination. If it's the case that you get COVID with the vaccine, and there are some people saying that people are getting COVID directly from the vaccine, and we know that it weakens your immune system and all that other stuff. If that's the case, then this could cause structural issues. And how many other integral corporations, providers of goods and services in the country are going to be making these mandates? That's a pretty significant development. It's a pretty significant development. And that's going to contribute to shortages and more supply chain issues, as if we haven't had enough already. And that's going to cause inflationary pressures. And in response to inflationary pressures, you're going to have more political pressure to institute price controls to prevent these big bad corporations from price gouging. And that's going to beget more shortages, which is going to beget more black market activity, which is bullish for Monero. So we're just going to go through some things that we're seeing shortages of. Supply shortages continue across the country. Here's the latest thing. Cars. The problem stems from the global shortage of computer chips, which controls dozens of functions in all modern vehicles. And this is something that I thought about just as an aside, guys. I think classic cars are going to make a comeback. I think the simple internal combustion engine automobile vehicle is going to make a comeback, because a lot of these new electric vehicles are just way too complicated. Like, you need like an electrical engineer to work on these things if you have a problem. And I was listening to a podcast about Tesla. It's like the tires for Tesla, which is something I never even thought about. To get the tires for Tesla, I mean, these tires cost like hundreds of dollars each, because they're like specialized and unique to the Tesla. And, if you have some kind of malfunction with the electrical components, that's going to cost a lot of money to fix. There's going to be a lot more maintenance costs and repair costs that goes into these things. Meanwhile, if you have, a 70s or 80s Camaro or Ford, one of these classic cars, you could fix this stuff yourself. You just go on YouTube, how to fix this, you get it fixed. And I was reading, as a result of this chip problem, the industry for auto repair is going to go up significantly. It's going to have a lot of business, because used cars are going through the roof, because a lot of these car companies aren't making new cars. And people are therefore inclined to then buy used cars. And if people are sticking with the cars that they have because they can't buy new cars, or they're buying used cars, automobile expenses are going to become a dominant factor in this economy. And so I think there's going to be an inclination towards classic cars that have easier repairs. So just an aside, maybe you think that's interesting. Coffee, we're having another shortage, and I think oranges are being affected by the freezes in Brazil. And coffee is just another one of those commodities which is skyrocketing as a result of inflation. And don't let them convince you that a lot of this stuff is just affiliated with supply chain issues. That's where the inflation narrative is. It's like, we have inflation, but it's as a result of the supply chain issues because people don't want to go back to work, and COVID has prevented people from going back to work because they can't be at the workplace if they're sick, blah, 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 right? But never forget the fact that the Fed printed so much money in 2020 and in 2021. They're still printing $120 billion every month to purchase treasuries and mortgage bonds. Excuse me, I just had some eggs. Come on, get up. Okay. There it is. But the amount of the U.S. money supply, like just as a reference, more than half the dollars which are in circulation now were not in circulation before 2020. Okay. They have increased M1, M2 through the roof. And I think in a single week in March of last year, they printed $7 trillion to save the system. They opened up all these swap lines all over the world, all of these lending facilities. And when banks get a lot of this money, if you understand how the fractional banking system works, they loan out more money on top of that. They themselves create money and create credit. And that all goes into commodity prices. It increases the cost of a lot of this stuff because you have more money chasing the same amount of goods, if not fewer goods, because of the whole supply chain shortage thing. So supply chain issues are a problem, but a lot of that is exacerbated by the Fed. Computer chips. So computers are going to become more expensive. It's terrible news for consumer electronics and manufacturers, especially for car makers, which we just talked about. Jet fuel. Shortage of tank truck drivers is causing fuel prices to go up. Airlines and airports are struggling to get the fuel they need because pipelines shifted away from carrying jet fuel when air travel ground to a near halt last year. And the cyber attack this year on the pipeline was probably not helpful to that either. Nike shoes. So this is probably the most worrisome one, if you want to know the truth, because, God forbid, we wouldn't want another repeat of June 2020, would we? Because, if they don't have those Nike shoes, man, they're going to burn it all down. So that's worrisome. School supplies. I guess that doesn't include masks. Morbid joke. Although parents might be used to encouraging shortages of items such as sneakers, backpacks, gadgets, blah, 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 they will not be able to get them because there are shortages. Taco Bell. And just as an aside, I went to McDonald's the other day, and the ketchup that they gave me, comment if you guys have noticed this too, but the ketchup in the packets is significantly less than what it used to be. It's just something that I noticed after like the 5th packet. I'm like, do these have less ketchup in them or something? Because it's just like, I have to go through so many more packets to, get the same amount of ketchup. So, more shortages. This was something somebody sent me about shortages for metal, steel, aluminum. We saw shortages in lumber earlier this year. And so this is something that you could just pause the video and take a look at. I'm not going to read through all of this, but yeah, you just have shortages everywhere. Political unrest in South Africa. And in South Africa and a lot of these other African nations where there's tremendous amount of political risk and instability. Interestingly, there's a lot of instability in places where the presidents did not want to impose the vaccine on the population. I wonder what is up with that. But yeah, a lot of metals are mined out of these places. A lot of aluminum, a lot of platinum, palladium. A lot of this comes from these African nations where there are problems. So, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of these shortages will lead to price increases, what the Fed is doing every month, what they've been doing ever since March, and really what they've been doing ever since 2009. as a response to the global financial crisis. You're going to have prices on things go higher and higher and higher. This inflationary problem is not transitory. Like, it's weird seeing how the Fed has been responding to all this. They first started off by saying that there is no inflation, and then they said, okay, there's a little bit of inflation, but it's transitory. And then they said, okay, inflation may be going on for a sustained period, and the IMF keeps putting out reports in regards to this. And now they're saying, I'm going to look this up right now so you guys could actually see this. Now they're saying inflation is good. There was some article that said inflation is good. Let's see. Yellen, inflation is good. Higher interest rates would be a plus, which basically means inflation would be a plus. Higher interest rates would be good for the country. Yeah, that's... Could you believe she actually said this? Oh my God, this is the Treasury Secretary, former Fed official, by the way. Higher interest rates would be good for the country. So, making debt more expensive, making it more expensive for you to borrow money, that would be good. That would be fantastic. And so, they're consistently moving the goalposts because they see what's coming, right? And they don't want people to freak out about inflation because hyperinflation really is a psychological event, because when people start to see that inflation is becoming a sustained issue, what they'll do is they'll try to front run that inflation. They'll go to Costco, they'll go to Kroger, they'll go to their suppliers, and they'll try to stock up on as much as they can now while the money still has value relative to what it will be in the future, and they'll front run the inflation. And so that'll cause even more pressure on the supply chains, and that'll make shortages ever more present, and that will beget even higher prices. People front run those higher prices, and then it just turns into a spiral into hyperinflation. And we're not there yet because they're trying to manage the narrative, but that's what's coming. That is what's coming. So Mises has a lot of great economic articles. They're the place to go for Austrian economics. I've been visiting this website for years. They're fantastic. But I wanted to go through this article because this relates to why it is Monero and a lot of these other privacy coins, Darrow, Pirate Chain, Haven, are going to be super mega bullish into the environment that we're going into, because they are the black market currencies du jour. They can't be tracked, they can't be traced. So let's start reading. Price controls have existed since time immemorial. No matter the time or place, the result of such measures has always been the same: shortages and black market activity. Under the rule of Roman Emperor Diocletian, price controls were imposed through the Edict on Maximum Prices in 301 AD. The purpose of this law was to combat inflationary prices present throughout the Roman economy and rein in the avarice of merchants. A half measure at best that did not address the underlying cause of inflation, monetary debasement. This law resulted in shortages, business shutting down, and the emergence of black markets, and if they had Monero back in the day, the emergence of Monero and black market currencies. So, one thing I want to highlight, monetary debasement, that's exactly what we're seeing now. And price controls aren't too far away. The U.S. was not exempt from the harsh laws of economics either. In 1971, Nixon issued Executive Order 11615 to stabilize the economy, reduce inflation, and minimize unemployment. Despite being passed under the premise of fighting inflation and curbing the effects of the OPEC production cuts, these price controls not only proved to be ineffective in curbing inflation, but they also created a new problem: shortages. Because exactly, like we saw this in 2020 with the pandemic. You saw people going to the supermarkets to buy out everything that was going to be in high demand in the future. I remember going to Kroger before everybody figured this stuff out, and I saw this huge bin of hand sanitizer. And I thought to myself, this is going to be gone in like a week. And I wasn't going to price gouge or do anything like that. I just picked up like 3 of them. I was like, this is going to be very necessary. And this was back when I was actually scared of the virus. But I went back a week later. It was all gone. All of it was gone. You couldn't find hand sanitizer anywhere. And if you looked online for hand sanitizer, there was like a markup of 4x on this stuff. And then you had Amazon kicking people off of their platform because they were price gouging, and everybody was getting all upset about this. And so kicking people off the platform, that's sort of like cracking down on price gouging, which is a price control in and of itself. And I think there were price controls instituted from the very top, if I recall. But you had shortages of masks, you had shortages of all this stuff. I think masks went up to like $300, $400 for a single pack. There are these people going around everywhere picking up masks from all the stores, and that leads to shortages because they know that at these stores, the masks that they're selling for $20, they could sell online in the black market for a markup of like 10x. And if you're getting kicked off Amazon, if you're getting kicked off a lot of these other platforms, eBay, to sell these things, you could just go to the dark net, the dark web, and you could sell it there for Monero and Pirate Chain, right? I think that's what's coming. Analyze the Nixon-era price controls. Renowned economist Thomas Sowell noted that price controls turned a minor adjustment into a major shortage. Instead of letting prices rise, thus providing oil companies an incentive to produce more, the U.S. government decided to impose arbitrary controls that delayed the necessary market adjustment. So there's a saying in the commodity market sector that the cure to high prices is high prices. Now, why is that? Because when prices are high, that disincentivizes people to purchase those products. And so when demand goes down as a result of the high prices, that allows more supply to come back into the market because high prices encourage people to go out and get more of whatever it is that's in shortage, whether it's lumber, whether it's oil, whether it's gold. And once that supply hits the market, then prices go down, and then demand comes back, and then things stabilize. But when you have price controls, that's not allowed to happen. You just have more and more shortages. Like clockwork, long lines resulted. Consumers that were frustrated with waiting hours in line would use black market means to buy gas at significantly higher prices. And if we go into a totally digital currency environment, if the central banks come out with their central bank digital currencies, which is only going to make inflation go even more nuclear. I mean, we've talked about this before on the channel. There are people out there, prominent people, asking the question, why is it the Fed can't just directly send money to people's bank accounts? Just think about that for a second. Could you imagine how bad inflation would get if people just woke up and they checked their bank accounts and they saw like $1,000 in there from the Fed? Which is what happened last year, but could you imagine that becoming a recurring thing? I mean, universal basic income a couple years ago with Andrew Yang, that was a laughable concept. But now that's going to become pretty commonplace. It's been normalized, and there's no reason to think that's not going to become a normal facet of our lives. And it could be with a central bank digital currency that what they do is they put like a timer on how much or how long that you could hold that digital currency. And so that's going to incentivize you to go out and spend that money. Because the whole idea is we need to prevent the economy from collapsing into a deflationary spiral, which freezes the credit markets, which pretty much makes the economy fall into the abyss because there isn't any velocity of money, and so everything just kind of stops. So they'll put a timer on the funds that they deposit in your account. They'll give you like a week to spend it, and so that'll encourage money velocity. But just think about the hyperinflationary effects of that. It's going to be crazy. And that said, if you have a totally digital economy and you don't have cash with which to spend in the black markets, and you can't spend your central bank digital currency in the black market, you can't really spend your Bitcoin in the black market because Bitcoin can be tracked and traced, as can a lot of other cryptocurrencies. What are you going to use to transact in the black market? You're going to use Monero. You're going to use Pirate Chain because it can't be tracked or traced. And so that's just like super hyper mega bullish for Monero. Where it is we're going with these shortages, where it is we're going with the central bank digital currencies. Oh, good stuff for Monero, bad stuff for humanity in general. God bless us. God really help us with where we're going. But this is why we really need to get this content out there, guys. We really need to let people know what's going on. We really need to encourage people to take a look at these privacy coins, because this stuff really is sort of like an arc off of the system. No matter how much more expensive the good is, given the stark reality that price-controlled white market cannot meet consumer demand. Even Venezuela has dabbled in price controls in the not-too-distant past. More shortages, more black market activity. The laws of economics are universal. They apply to developed countries. Just want to see if I'm recording. Just as much as developing countries. When price controls are implemented, shortages and black market activity are to be expected. No government, no matter how well-intentioned or powerful it claims to be, can violate these principles without consequences. In the realm of economics, no government can play God. Great article written by who's the author? Jose Nino. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Jose. So here we're going to talk about Monero being the currency that is used on the dark net. The only currency really. Nobody really uses Bitcoin anymore, which, by the way, is why I was so skeptical of those stories that came out earlier this year about the FBI recovering Bitcoin from these cyber terrorist wallets. Do you guys remember that? Like the people who hacked the Colonial Pipeline, the people who hacked the meat production factories, like they requested Bitcoin? Come on, that can't be real. Nobody cyber attacks somebody requesting Bitcoin. In this day and age, like if you're that technologically and cybernetically advanced to where you can pull something like that off, and to then request a surveillance coin like Bitcoin instead of Monero or Pirate Chain, that really kills credibility in the story for me. Like, come on. And then they're Russians. Of course they're Russians, right? Of course they're the Ruskies. But the FBI was then somehow able to get the funds back from the wallet, which is, again, even more unbelievable, because how do you do that with Bitcoin? The Bitcoin network can't be hacked unless quantum computing comes out. How did they get the coins back? Unless the FBI, that's going to get me kicked off YouTube. I can't say that. But, like, unless, let's just say it was an inside job, right? It's just an inside job. Bitcoin initially became popular as a way to pay for illegal goods on the dark web marketplace, the Silk Road. But just recently, as cryptocurrencies enter the mainstream media once again, the current most active marketplace on the dark net has ditched Bitcoin in favor of Monero. Here's why Bitcoin's use as a dark web currency is diminishing, and why Monero could see a surge in adoption as that one cryptocurrency the government can't infiltrate. Correct. And there's still a bounty out to crack Monero, as far as I could tell, which has yet to be taken up by anybody. $625,000. If you can figure it out, kudos to you. $625,000 worthless fiat Federal Reserve notes coming your way. Even if I cracked Monero and figured out its privacy issue, which probably wouldn't be that big of an issue, relative to using Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency, I would probably take that $625,000 and buy Monero or a Pirate Chain. You know, if you figure out the crack in Monero and you take that $625,000 and buy Pirate Chain, that would be hilarious. And I hear Pirate Chain has better security than Monero, although I'm not technologically sophisticated. That's just what the people say. Without the dark web, the Bitcoin we know today might not be $40,000 a coin. I think that's probably true. The still young cryptocurrency network might not have made it this far if not for the Silk Road dark web marketplace created by Ross Ulbricht. God help him. Free Ross. Back when nobody knew... Did somebody write this article from a different country? Back when no one knew what to pay for Bitcoin or had begun widely using it as a currency, it got an early jump start as a means to pay for illegal goods such as drugs, firearms, explosives. Bitcoin got a head start as a currency thanks to the Silk Road dark web marketplace. Right, so there are other marketplaces on the dark web. I'm not a frequent visitor of the dark web. In fact, I've never been on it myself. I know people who are able to get onto it, and they show me things. I've never purchased anything on the dark web. Frankly, it just kind of freaks me out. It kind of scares me. I am, again, a technological noob. I feel like if I go on there, somebody will see my IP address or something like that, figure out where I live and kill me. I'm just very skeptical of that stuff. But, yeah, the more Monero is used on the dark web, the longer it's used for, the more credit has as a legitimate black market currency, and that is bullish. That is bullish. The dark web's most active marketplace, dubbed the White House Market, it has given up on Bitcoin for good and now only accepts the privacy coin Monero. So this is something that I talked about in yesterday's video. An illegal way that people cash out their Monero and privacy coin profits is they purchase physical cash on the dark net. There are places that you could go on the dark net and you could buy thousands of dollars of Swiss francs, of US dollars, of Russian rubles, of whatever currency that you want, and you pay a little bit of a premium in Monero, but you can still get that cash, which is liquid cash that you can use to pay your taxes, that you can use to buy goods and services in the marketplace. You could even buy counterfeit currency. Again, I don't recommend any of this stuff. It's all illegal. But that's what people can do. White House Market uses Monero, a cryptocurrency designed to safeguard the privacy of its previous owners. As Bitcoin takes center stage in the world of finance, its value increases. The value it offers to the dark web in terms of privacy is shrinking by the day. And because of what we were talking about in regards to price controls and the growth of the black market, the dark web is going to increase in value. And so if Bitcoin's going down relative to the increase in value of the dark web, that is a base pair you could trade by buying Monero. You can get exposure to that development with privacy coins. Bitcoin is now an asset that institutions control, and its market cap is approaching $1 trillion. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy. More stuff here if you want to check it out. I have nothing more to really say about that. Yeah, so again, government agencies have become increasingly successful in taking down dark web websites, and it could be due to their increased understanding of the Bitcoin blockchain. And that's something that the Bitcoin people I see on Twitter aren't really commenting too much about. The government is employing a lot of analysis firms that are able to use things like Bayesian reasoning, Bayesian networks, artificial intelligence to figure out a lot about the Bitcoin blockchain. And that should concern you if you're one of these libertarians and they're blinded by the laser eyes and they can only see the gains, but they can't really see the dark, creeping hands coming around their throats and coming around their beloved Bitcoin. I think it would be a tragedy if Bitcoin was lost. And mind you, I would be much more bullish on Bitcoin if we weren't in this environment. If we weren't in an environment of growing technocratic, panopticonical surveillance totalitarianism, I would be all over Bitcoin. I'd be like, cool, Bitcoin is awesome. Like, maybe it's not as efficient as some other currencies. Maybe it's not as secure. Maybe it's not as efficient to use. But hey, public blockchain, we can all verify transactions. It's limited. There are a lot of good things about Bitcoin. But when you're in this environment, privacy is such a premium to have. And the general crypto market, I don't think, has woken up to this yet. And when you have Monero only being valued at about $4 billion right now, and Pirate Chain being valued at about $600 million, dude, these things are just going to explode. It's going to be amazing. Because the total wealth trading in the black market right now, I think I saw an article, it's like $250 billion a year. $250 billion a year. And you look at the VPN market, it's about $30 billion a year. Bitcoin is valued at $750 billion. Just imagine if flows from these pools start to make their way into the privacy coin market. I mean, you're talking major returns. And the awesome thing about that, if you're a criminal, if you're operating out of the system illegally, which you shouldn't do, I can't recommend you do that, but when these currencies go up significantly in value, nobody will be able to tell how much gain you have. And if the government comes out with unrealized capital gains taxes, which we've talked about here, they're not going to be able to see how much of a gain you've realized. Just more incentive to get into these things early before they explode. Okay. Traditionally, black market operators dealt only in cash. In fact, that once ranked the black market as the most distinguishing characteristic, or at least one of them. However, on the internet, some now choose to conduct black market activities in digital currency. Well, once cash gets increasingly pushed out of circulation, and we've seen crackdowns on cash in India, we've seen national coin shortages here in the United States, which I think will extend to cash as well. Monero and Pirate Chain are going to go up significantly in value. Experts can only guess at the size of the black market by default. Black markets often deal in illicit and dangerous goods, or goods that are having supply shortages and have price controls. Whether online or in person, a black market offers a venue to purchase illegal products that otherwise could not be traded. One of the most profitable and shocking is human trafficking. Yeah, that's terrible. Guys, don't do that. Okay. Investopedia reports that as many as 25 million people are trapped in modern-day slavery. It's an estimated $150 billion a year industry. See, that's kind of the unfortunate thing about investing in these privacy coins, is that, going back to what I said earlier, a lot of the stuff is bearish for humanity and very bullish for privacy coins. You know, shortages, drugs, gambling, all this stuff, human trafficking. It's really terrible stuff, but, they're going to use Monero. They're going to use Monero and stuff. And that just kind of made me sad. It sort of reminds me of like that feeling I first had when I thought gold was a good investment and silver and all this other stuff. And I started listening to a lot of Peter Schiff. And at first I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, we're going to make a lot of money when the system crashes. And then I thought, oh, the system's going to crash and that's going to destroy the lives of hundreds of millions of people. That's scary. It's sort of like that scene from The Big Short where those two young guys who start, what was it called? Like Bear Capital or something like that. They go in with Brad Pitt's character to the casino, and they're making deals with people. They're buying all of these mortgage swaps, which make a lot of money when the mortgage market fails. And they make all these deals, and they're walking out of there like high-fiving and singing. They're like, yeah, we're going to make all this money. And Brad Pitt's character is like, no, stop it. Like, you don't understand. The reason you're going to get rich is because everybody's going to get poor. And we're going to have tremendous amounts of human suffering. So while you may be better off, good for you. But ultimately, a lot of people are going to suffer because of this, and you should keep that in mind. You should keep that in mind. And, there is a really good thing to Monero and Pirate Chain to get people off the system, but we can't deny the fact that it is going to be used for a lot of evil. And we should try to pray for these people who use it for evil. God bless them. May they turn away from it, even if it reduces the value of our precious coins, because we do care about human life more than our privacy coins. So that's a good note to end on. Let me go full screen here. So, some interesting developments. As shortages continue, black markets will grow. Black market currencies will grow as the war on cash continues. In tandem with this increase in shortages and black market activity. Man, I'm burpy today. Very bullish for the privacy currencies. Okay, so again, if you find this information to be valuable, which I think it really is, and we should really get it out there to people, please like the video. It helps the algorithms move it to the top. Please comment. That also moves the algorithms. And if you have interesting information in regards to this, if you have interesting thoughts, please leave a comment. I'd like to know what you think. And that's about all for today. I've got to get going. I didn't even look at the time. This was a little bit longer than I anticipated. Man, I really know how to talk my head off, don't I? But thank you to all the new subscribers who have come to the channel. Follow me at Twitter. Follow me at Gab. Monero Mateo is the name. And thank you guys for watching. You guys have a wonderful day. God bless.